How am I going to start this video? What am I going to talk about? I have to just kind of ease into it. I think I'm going to mention that a little bit about my background. Maybe I started in Eastern Europe, a country called Romania, in a province called Transylvania within Romania. And Transylvania is a province that throughout history was going back and forth. It was in Hungary, then it was in Romania, back to Hungary, back to Romania, depending on where the borders were drawn right after the wars, various wars. And in particular, well, in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the 1800s, including the Revolution of 1848, which is a big one. Transylvania was belonged to Hungary. Hungary was huge, and it joined with Austria, and it was huge. Germany was just a whole bunch of states, independent little states, right? Germany wasn't joined yet, but Austria joined with Hungary, so you had the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And Transylvania was an important part of that. If you go back a few hundred years, Transylvania always had various ethnic nationalities in it. It had Hungarians, Romanians, Germans, and Gypsies. Right. And you would have a few major cities, and the rest were towns, countryside, right? Peasants. And a lot of these towns, if you were to travel between the major cities, a lot of these towns, some of the towns were Romanian villages. Not towns. Well, some towns, but I'm talking about villages right now. There were Romanian villages, Hungarian villages, German villages, and the Germans were brought in, I understand, by the Hungarians to build the major cities, which they did a very fine job at. They were the best at order and organization, design and craftsmanship. They were the craftsmen who knew their skills in how to construct the most complicated buildings and design cities, building very well planned out cities, which they did. And they actually built Cluj, where I come from, as well. The Germans did. And they built Sibiu. You got to understand, all these cities, they have three different names. They have a name in Romanian, a name in Hungarian, and a name in German. So, depending on which one you want to use. But the Romanian names are Sibiu, Cluj, Sighișoara, and Brașov. And they're all wonderful, wonderful cities built by the Germans in Transylvania. And the traditional Romania is down to the south, to the east, across the mountains. Transylvania is on one side of the mountains. Traditional Romania is on the outside of the mountains. Mountains come down like this. So to the east of the mountains and to the south of the Carpathian mountain chain. Very nice very nice area. I went through that area, and that's Bucharest is right down in the south. And but why am I telling you this? Well, I'm telling you this because that's where I come from, and I'm just trying to tell you that. And what had happened is these four groups of people, they coexisted quite well. And what happened was when the communists came in, I believe in 1933, the same year that Hitler came to power, communism took over many countries, because in Russia the Bolsheviks had already taken over, and they finally had their successful revolution, which wasn't really a revolution at all. It was a provoked uprising, a brutality. They massacred the whole family of the Tsar and the whole bit. But anyway, so this virus, communist virus, spread over to all the other countries. And in 1933, the trade unions and all that were brainwashed into bringing in and joining with the communists and becoming communists. So Romania became communist, and the dictator Ceausescu came into power. And what happened with communism, everything about communism is one major lie. The whole system, the whole regime, all of society is based on and built upon the foundation, which is a lie. So every day you have to live within this lie, and you must believe the lie. The more you believe the lie, and the more you act out your belief in that lie, the more special privilege you will receive from the regime, from the Marxist regime, because you're keeping this system of terror afloat while it has no legs, because a lie cannot be a foundation. Only truth can be a foundation. There's no truth. There's nothing resembling reality or truth. It's the twisting, it's the distortion of truth in every sector of society within communism. And you're experiencing it now in the West, wherever you are. You're experiencing it. You're starting to really get into it. I'm excited about that. The reason I'm excited is because now that when I talk to people, they're starting to get it. There's a glimmer. There's a glimmer in their eye that they may just understand what I'm talking about. Because if you deviated from that lie, the whole system would come under scrutiny and be absolutely threatened. Communism is always fragile, and it is always prone to crumble if the population acquires awareness. So you can see right here on YouTube and in your society in general that they're at war. They're fighting awareness is what they're doing. It's just awareness. Awareness is their enemy. That's why in a communist society, in a Marxist communist society, the most important thing that they can do, the paramount direction for them, is to stifle and actually eliminate awareness. Because if people are aware, 75% of the battle is already won, just through awareness. No guns, no violence, no destruction, no riots, no death, no war, just awareness. And that is what they want to stop. They want you to not be aware. So they're using every tactic to stop your awareness. In fact, to confuse you. In fact, to send you down completely the wrong direction. And the more they do that, the more you are on their side. The more you defend them. And that's what's happening right now. And you're feeling it. And it's happening right here on YouTube. And you've seen it. You've seen it with your own eyes. Videos disappearing. Channels disappearing. And pretty soon, people disappear. Actually, people have been disappearing. It's just that you're not connected to them personally. But as it progresses, as they get more desperate, you're going to actually be connected personally to those people who disappear. First they get ruined, character assassinated, and then after that, it progresses to such a point that they actually get assassinated. They get taken away. They get pumped up with psychiatric medications so that if you ever do see them again, they literally are zombies. They're not the same people that you've known. See, communism must resort to coercion, to violence, which includes torture, concentration camps. Communism must employ force. Force is a key ingredient in the survival of a communist state. And political correctness is basically being forced to have the right politics, the correct politics according to them. You cannot have a dissenting point of view, because then you're against the party. You're an enemy of the state. And that is exactly what you're experiencing and seeing right now, regardless of where you live in the West. The West has become exactly like the East was 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, 100 years ago. Executions, demoralization of the whole society. They must resort to all that because it's the only way they can survive, because they are extremely fragile, because they're not based on truth, they're not based on reason, they're not based on logic, they're not based on nature, the laws of nature and the laws of God. They're not based on logos. Communism is always at war with logos, which is the order of nature, the order of God. Everything the communists do is against nature. When you look at it, everything is against nature. They're trying to deny your human nature. You must deny your human nature to be in the party, to be part of that ideology. What re-education actually means is the pounding into your brain by force with a blunt weapon, whatever that may be. It could be drugs, or it could be actual physical instruments, or it will be incessant propaganda from every angle that hits you. They pound the lie into your head so that you either become retarded for life, or you will be under such fear, such terror, horror, that you will never utter or show or feel or express or even think dissent against the lie. 2 + 2 = 5. Don't you dare give the wrong answer. In essence, you will relinquish your soul. You will hand over your soul to your masters. They will own your soul. After they take everything from you, they will take your culture, they will take your history, they will take your racial identity, they will take your religion, your faith, your beliefs, they will take your children, they will take your family, they will even take your gender. They will even take your gender, as you can see. They will take your masculinity. They will take your femininity. They will take your chances for a relationship. They will eliminate your ability to reproduce. They will separate the genders. They will separate the races. They will separate rich and poor. You from your friends, from your family. They will make you go against everyone around you. They will take your religion. They will take your faith. They will take everything. Absolutely everything. And they're doing it to you right now. They will take your possessions. They will remove everything which belongs to you. They will remove everything which makes you who you are. You will become nothing, just a shell with no soul. So that is the direction of where your world is going right now. And that's why I'm telling you where I come from and where my ideology was shaped and why. And they get a lot of their strength from pitting the various groups against each other. Identity politics is a formidable tool which they employ incessantly against you. So you see it. Now you know where it comes from. It's not the green-haired girl with tattoos. It's not your freaky uncle who voted for Hillary Clinton. No. There's a powerful force which drives these people and which has recruited and enticed these individuals to be their revolutionaries. Entice them through the incentive of privilege. They will be privileged if they work for them. They will be privileged if they fight against you and betray you. And you will also be privileged if you betray them. Everybody is going to be incentivized to betray everyone else. And that is the essence of communism. Now, you're living in these modern times right now, and what you should be doing is you should be drawing the parallels between what happened there and what those people did and what they're doing here now. So draw those parallels anytime you can. Anything you witness and anything you hear. See how the methodology is going to be identical to what went on over there. It's simply a question of magnitude as to how high they crank up the intensity of the tyranny that's coming. And you are now, I'm happy to tell you, finally, because I've been waiting for this, you are now living in that same system. And the magnitude is still not quite there yet, but they're turning it up every day. Just a tiny bit every day. Some days more than other days, some months more than other months. And so they pit the different groups against each other. You know, they try to manipulate the different groups to hate each other. Ever since Marx, the son of a well-to-do long line of rabbis, he started by pitting the bourgeois against the proletariat, the working class. And that worked. That worked for Russia. That worked for them to conquer the biggest country in the world. Now, we're talking achievement here. This is no small time. This is no Mickey Mouse stuff. Brutalizing, going in there and ripping apart the biggest nation in the world is no small feat. A bunch of Talmudic thugs bringing terror and horror to masses of people. It's hard to even fathom, right? I mean, we're talking achievement here, people. This is no small time. This. Where does it come from? Where does such motivation come from? It can only come from one place. Only one place. I'm into motivation. It's one of my areas of expertise, actually, motivation as well. Fascinated with motivation. The two male personality types differ in their motivation. Everything to do with motivation, their source of motivation, their intensity of motivation, the utility of their motivation, that's how they differ. We'll get into that later if I'm still around to do another video after this video. But what was I talking about? Yeah, I mean, that takes motivation. It can only come from one place. That kind of a strong, united motivation can only come from one place, one ideology. And that ideology is driven by none other than hatred. Visceral, powerful hatred. And it works. Hatred, it engenders powerful motivation. So you can conquer and loot the biggest country in the world. It's not enough. Oh no. You think that's enough? You think for that kind of a motivational background, motivational force behind you, you think that's enough? The largest country in the world? I don't think so. Have you ever heard of the globalists? It's gotta go global. And that maybe enough. I'm not sure, but it's got to go global. Because if it's not, if there's no supremacy, global supremacy, the best kind. They feel very insecure. They're actually afraid. Unless they're supreme. So that's where the globalists come from. That's where the motivation to go global comes from. And what happens then is to bring forth a revolution based on a lot of lies and a lot of promises. Most of it are contradictions. These are all based on the granting of privilege. The key word here throughout this whole video is privilege. What exactly is privilege, and what role does it play? And who has the privilege? And who are the only people who can grant privilege? And will you get privileged? Will you get special privilege? And how you can get special privilege? You can conquer the world if you offer people privilege. And there's a lot of people who do not function very well in a competitive society based on the laws of nature. And those are people who are in their millions and billions with their hands out for privilege. It's the exploitation of human nature, human vice, which turns people into being inhuman, all for privilege. If you can get just a tiny bit more privileged than that guy, the next guy, or the next woman, just a little bit more privilege. It's basically, life is a contest for privilege. And that can start humongous revolutions. The promise of privilege. The promise of liberty, freedom, give you freedoms which are actually privileges. That's the secret sauce. That's how they do it. They work on your mind. And the key to that is for you not to have awareness. That's the key. You cannot have awareness. If you have awareness, everything falls apart for them. And they are scared of that. And that's why you see videos disappearing, channels disappearing, people losing their jobs. That's why. Because they're so afraid of awareness. They're so afraid of awareness. Much of what you see is in communism is supremacy. Totalitarianism is supremacy, and it's supremacy over the population. And the goal of it all is to enslave the population and to conduct a massive looting operation. So they steal everything from you and enslave you. And as you give up, your liberty piece by piece, incrementally, you will eventually end up being a complete slave. And you will end up living in fear. And you will end up with no hope. And you will end up turning against your own brothers, sisters, neighbors, parents, relatives, co-workers. They're going to bring out the very worst that humanity has to offer within you. It's all communism is. There's the huge deception that brings communism to the masses, which creates this mass appeal, is nothing but it, deception. It's simply the promise of privilege, giving you importance, giving you artificial success. Privilege is nothing more than artificial success, an artificial identity, an artificial existence. That's their gift and promise to you. And you will get it if you advance their agenda, if you advance their artificial existence. And the disenfranchised, the envious, the incompetent, the underprivileged find it very seductive to join with the movement of communism, Marxism, in order to topple what they've been brainwashed to believe are their oppressors. But in fact, the very people that they join with, that they become accomplices to, are the forces that are actually suppressing them and enslaving them. And a lot of times they enslave them by actually giving them freedoms, certain freedoms to break away from their traditionalism, to break away from their morality. The key word is morality. Once you break away from your morality, then you have no foundation to exist on. That's how they rip your soul out, and your soul becomes theirs. Communism takes your soul. We have these four groups, and communism claims to promote the epitome of equality, equal outcome. Not just equal opportunity, but equal outcome. And they actually put a lot of this in practice, where they kill the intellectual class who are intelligent enough and educated enough to oppose them. They kill any form of dissent or possibility for dissent. They eliminate that. And what they do is they bring in the underclasses, the uneducated, the incompetent, and actually make them be the rulers of the society, either in minor or major positions, officials in every area of this new equal society. So they bring in the peasants, and they become school board officials. They become hospital directors, police chiefs, prison guards, city officials of all kinds, inspectors of all kinds. Everyone is their accomplice. They become all kinds of government directors and officials. They, in fact, they become the promoters and the instigators of the communist system for the very highest ruling class of that system. These lower officials carry out the dirty work. They become the enforcers, informants, prison guards of the entire population, locked into this system from which they cannot escape. They create and conduct hell on earth, and you have to believe the lie. And if you don't believe the lie, you will become the enemy of the system. You have to believe the lie even if it goes against all your principles, even if it goes against every level of reasoning that you may have, even if it goes against your morality. You have to still believe the lie and repeat the lie and promote the lie and instigate the lie every minute. And so the whole system is based on a lie. I'm actually happy that you're experiencing it, because ever since I left that system at the age of 10, I came to the West, the free West, I felt very alone. Because even though Marxism was available and functional in the West, on its way to becoming the ruling ideology, infiltrating itself throughout every institution, academia being one, entertainment through Hollywood, government, every sector of government, municipal, federal, provincial, state, whatever, infiltrating itself through the judicial system, infiltrating itself through the financial system completely, putting the country under a central bank like the Federal Reserve or Bank of Canada, the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, every industry that you can imagine, they infiltrated. Total takeover, and cultural as well, through cultural Marxism, which is indoctrination through the shaping of your opinions, your morals, your principles, dictating what goes into the textbooks, from grade school all the way up. And the system, through its tentacles in every aspect of society, had taken over not just the country, but has taken over the minds of every individual in that country. You're experiencing it now in every Western country in the world. The same thing, taking over your mind. So it was a major achievement. Major achievement. You gotta admit that. I grew up as a single child, and I'm just gonna tell you where my ideology comes from. I didn't grow up around kids my age. I grew up around adults. So the first 10 years of my life were very seminal. And I learned a lot just by listening. Just by witnessing people being persecuted every day. There was a fair amount of racism, prejudice, discrimination in Transylvania, especially in Transylvania. What the communists did is they the two major groups in Romania were the Romanians and the Hungarians, and they made sure that they would divert attention from what the communists were doing and raping the country, oppressing and terrorizing the people who had to live a lie. They had to live a lie in destitution, poverty, with some granted privilege. This much privilege, or this much privilege, or this much privilege. That was the difference. Basically, the whole country was destitute, living in fear, and living a lie. Communists diverted attention by turning the different ethnic groups against each other for no reason whatsoever. Fabrications. So, and the other thing they do is they transplanted populations, entire populations, into different areas. The same thing that they're doing now in all of Europe, transporting other populations and forcing them to live with people that they are absolutely incompatible with and know nothing about. What you have is the collision of cultures, races. That's exactly what they want. So back when I left in 1974, half of the population of Transylvania was Hungarian, half. Now it's less than 20%. You know, Romanians are great people. I really like them. Hungarians and Romanians coexisted for hundreds of years. And the communists, as you see it today, right here in North America, as you see it, it's Marxist makes different people hate each other. They provoke them to hate each other. And that happened in every single country under communist rule. And now it's happening everywhere in the West. A fabricated war. They create tension, they create animosity, hatred among any group. And they do that by offering privilege to those who engage in the hatred. And become their revolutionaries, become their subversives, and destroy their own countries. Be it gender war, be it a class war, economic class war, be it a racial war against any race, basically against the white race. And it creates a lot of hatred, it creates a lot of dehumanization by one group, you know, towards another group. It creates, in fact, instability, and it creates revolution, to the point where white people, Christians, end up massacring each other. And that's the goal. That's the goal. It's always been the goal. It's been every European, every American war, well, the Civil War anyway. It's brothers massacring brothers. There are no organic uprisings, actually, or revolutions. Revolutions are not spontaneous. Uprisings and revolutions are carefully planned and manipulated into happening by certain actions, all based on lies, all based on fabrications. by subversive elements within the nation. All based on the promise of privilege. Remember, the key word throughout this whole video is going to be privilege. Privilege is very important. Privilege can move the world. Privilege can motivate people to do anything. There was one more group in Romania, as well as in every other nation in Europe. And those were, they called themselves Jews, but I call them Kazars, because they have no genetic connection to the biblical Jews that the Christian Zionists love to, are so enamored with. The biblical Jews. These are not the biblical Jews. You know, as the story goes, they come from Khazaria, which is in between the Black Sea and Caspian Sea, right above, northeast of Turkey, near Ukraine, and they converted sometime in the 700s AD to Judaism because they were pagans and they needed a religion, so they co-opted this, appropriated this Judaic religion. And this was no heartfelt conversion to a religion. This was for purposes of economic expediency. And they never did assimilate into society. There was always whites and Judaics. Much of the Judaics were always atheists. Atheism is quite compatible with, perfectly compatible with Judaism, as they would even admit. So what happened is this group of people were always interested in subverting societies wherever they went. Now, a lot of you listening to this would have no idea what I'm talking about, and would really question my would really question my motivations. But if you're going to understand how your world functions, and if you're going to make sense about anything that happens on a daily basis, anything and everything, minor and major, you're going to have to understand the Kazars. Now, this is a group of people that can be admired, actually. Admired greatly. They're truly unique. Truly unique in their ability to transcend inhibition within the confines of morality. So basically they can transcend morality. And they can transcend what they call a fear of God, which is which are the parameters of the rules of nature and the order of God. They have always been at war with the rule of nature and the order of God. The Greek word for it being logos, the root word for logic. Reason, logic and reason, which creates morality, of course, and dictates morality. So they're basically free of that, and they're able to conduct themselves in such a way that it is actually incredible to witness. Now, this is nothing new. What you see happening today wherever you live, has been going on for centuries and centuries. Because this is what these people do. These people ferment revolution. They ferment wars, instability. They engineer societies, are able to change the course of the world, the direction of the world, both politically and culturally, and also in the way that your values and your morality is shaped. They shape your mind. They shape your thinking. They shape your opinions. They shape your very identity incrementally, and sometimes in the most subtle of ways. But it's insidious. You may not realize it, or you may deny it, but you have been shaped by the Kazars. You are a product of the Kazars. A good portion of what you stand for and what you believe is a production of the Kazars. And this is how, and they take over entire nations. They take over the world. Now, the way they do it is simply through the granting of privilege. So we hear a lot about white privilege. Well, white privilege is a pure Kazar fabrication. It's an false accusation and a projection of a quintessential Kazar proclivity, the granting of privilege, or being privileged. Being a Kazar is inherently being privileged, and no Kazar would allow the Goyim to be privileged. That will never happen. So the whole notion of white privilege is an absolute grotesque fabrication by the Kazars to divert attention from their own monopoly on privilege. The big deception here about white privilege is that Kazars function in both worlds. They function in their own Khazarian world, and they also function in the white world. They're simultaneously present in both worlds. Other racial groups cannot do that, nor do they ever want to. That's the key. But the Kazar wants to. The Kazar wants to always infiltrate, which they have. They've infiltrated everything. Somebody who's Vietnamese is never going to be thought of being in part of the white establishment. Kazars can do that, and that's why they can infiltrate everything and anything. A lot of them are what they call crypto Jews, in which they pretend to be other things than they actually are. They're masquerading as other religions within society. They're Kazars in secret. And what happens is they've acquired huge amounts of wealth through basically usury. Huge amounts of wealth. And when you have wealth, you get control. And when you get control, you then own privilege. And you have a tremendous amount of privilege, which then you could grant to others in order to manipulate and corrupt them. So largely the society that you live in is functions on Kazar privilege. Now, think about that statement. Think about it. And think about the examples in your world that you can attribute that statement to and validate it. Whenever they want to buy anyone, they simply grant them privilege. Now, getting back to communism. Communism, the way it functions is they bring the entire nation down to the most destitute level possible. Usually just to the point of starvation. To absolutely disgrace, demoralize, degrade the society and individual to the point of, you may have heard that one could go to Cuba and get a blowjob for a bar of soap. That's how denigrated the individual becomes under communism. So please don't ask for communism. And if you do, you will truly deserve what the Kazars are going to give you. And in such a society, survival becomes the goal. Simply survival, as opposed to death. And a little privilege goes a long way. Tiny little bit of privilege. And those in power can hand out a tiny little bit of privilege for what they want you to do for them. And in order to get anybody to do anything, those people are just granted a bit more privilege. So if your neighbors are almost starving, you're going to have some sausage in your cellar. That's your privilege. If you're sweeping the streets, you will then be given another position, a bit higher. You will then become the supervisor of the street sweepers. You may even be made into a college professor, a university professor, depending on how much privilege they give you, depending on how much you work for them, the Kazars. Because remember who your rulers are, remember who is in power, and only those can hold privilege, and only those can grant privilege. And it is not white privilege. Communist Romania, let's say, nobody owned a car, but if you're in the party, you're granted privilege, you owned a car. You were in a higher position professionally. You had power in society. Most importantly, you were given authority over others around you because you worked for the party. Depending on how much you worked for the party, for the state, for the big lie, for the ideology, how much you were a proponent, how much you carried out the objectives of the state, which in communism are Khazarian objectives. As simple as that. So actually this video is about success. It's a success seminar. It's the kind of success seminar that you've never ever heard before, because nobody would tell you this. How to be successful. What is the fastest and the most assured route to success? And it also may point to the reason why you are a failure, why you are a loser, why at least you have not achieved your potential. And that goes for all of us, including myself. No, I'm not picking on anybody here in this video, myself included. Then I'm going to analyze for you and point to an individual whom you can use as your example, as your role model, someone who did utilize this most assured method to reach success. And he now has an international career and is rich and famous, because when you get successful, you get rich and famous, and most people want to be rich and famous. But most of us are not rich or famous. And you're going to realize why. What is the simple rule for you to be successful? But before I do that, you also have to understand that if every form of communication is controlled by one group of people, one very cohesive group of people with the objective of world supremacy, there's nothing to stop such a group. They're going to secure for themselves tremendous privilege and a tremendous opportunity to conduct objectives and behaviors without any hindrance, without any opposition. If a group of people owns all of the mainstream media, now all of the social media, the financial system, politics in its entirety, in the West, in politics, there's only two types of people, and only two types of people can ever make it into politics. And those are either Kazars or people who are owned by Kazars. Those are the only two people. So in communism, going back 50, 100 years, 100th year anniversary this year of the Russian Revolution, which is also falsely named. Everything is a hoax with the Kazars. Everything is doublespeak. If you want to know how Kazars operate, you simply read George Orwell's 1984, and it's a book that I heard that he had to call it fiction because he would have gotten into a lot of trouble. He could not release it as nonfiction. So everything you see there, every little bit of symbolism is actual fact, how the Kazars operate and how they enslave entire populations. The securing of privilege. Privilege is a commodity, and it's not something that you get just for being a certain color. Okay, and people have to understand that there is no white privilege. What it is Kazar privilege. People with the money and moreover people that control the money are the people that own and control privilege. And then they can grant that privilege. And if you want to be successful in life, the number one thing that you have to do is to be able to secure that privilege. And the way you secure that privilege is by being on the side of the Kazars, by being an accomplice, an agent of the Khazars. It's the only way that you're going to get ahead in life, in any profession, in any field. Now, if you are talented, if you are a very hard worker, if you are very attractive, if you are very ambitious, you have everything going for you. You are certainly going to be an underachiever unless you're granted Kazar Privilege. Now, you don't have to be good looking, you don't have to be smart, you don't have to be ambitious, you don't have to be talented. If you happen to be a Kazar, or if you work for the Kazars, you will by default automatically become an overachiever. You're going to achieve higher than you deserve to achieve. So it's your number one rule. If you want to be successful, you can work as hard as you can. You can be as talented as you can be. You're only going to get to this level. Just to this level. You're not going to pass a certain level because the Kazars will not let you. Here's somebody who is a independent operator. He's not working for us. The Kazars are the biggest, the most ruthless, the most powerful criminal organization. And that is why, that is what communism is. It's the takeover of an organized criminal group of the entire nation. This is a highly supremacist group, totally insular, with a very firm ideology. Some would say a ruthless ideology. Usually after the instigator revolution. So through academia, since academia is totally owned by the Kazars, starting with the Frankfurt School in the 30s, who came to America as Hitler was coming to power, came to America, and they were going to change the society that was here. It was ruled by WASPs and, to a lesser extent, Catholics. A lot of the universities were Catholic run and owned. When I even went to the University of Alberta, U of A, in the early 80s, I started there in 84, 83, end of 83, fall of 83. I still had at least one professor who was a Catholic priest, and there was a building at the very center of the university for the Catholic priests. But the Kazars had taken over these universities gradually since the 30s, where now you understand that they're microcosms or bastions of Marxism. Every university, even the previously very Catholic universities, have fallen under Kazar rule. So in case you're wondering what all the turmoil is all about, what all the craziness, what all the war against human nature is all about on every campus in North America, and in case you think it's the invasion of the green-haired girls with piercings and tattoos and their male counterparts, no. It's all the work of the Kazars. They are inculcating Marxism. It's their system of enslaving and mind control on every campus. Those students are going to then be sent out into the world and are going to become revolutionaries for the Kazars. And these students are incentivized. They are granted Kazar Privilege if they toe the line, if they bring forth Kazar and work for and fight for Kazar objectives. Somebody coming into this university who didn't grow up in an area where I grew up, didn't grow up in an environment that I grew up in, didn't grow up with the people that I grew up with, coming into university at that young age, didn't have the awareness that I already had in my first 10 years of my life. Somebody who comes in who comes from a small town from northern Alberta, which is a cultural desert, to say the least, would come into the environment of academia absolutely exposed, very impressionable to Kazar indoctrination, and without any defense against, he would have no aversion to Marxism because he didn't witness it firsthand. He would later have to read books on Marxism and would erroneously, predictably conflate it with National Socialism. He would be very vulnerable to being corrupted by Kazar ideology, even if it's just to the extent of realizing what establishes success, what engenders success through academia. And in academia, it's not the intelligent, it's not the competent who are chosen for advancement, the higher levels who are chosen for success. It's the individuals who promote and who carry out Kazar objectives, who work for the party. Every university is, in fact, as you have finally seen, and I'm very happy that if you've opened your eyes, you've seen it in the last few years. Every university, every campus is a Marxist state. It's a totalitarian, brutal, punishing Marxist state. It's authoritarian. So a certain individual is going to be allowed to operate. Only a certain type of individual is going to be allowed to operate and will be granted privilege. Remember, there's no white privilege. There's Kazar privilege. No such thing as white privilege. In fact, whites now, due to the Kazars who want to eliminate whites and who hate whites, it's documented in the Talmud. In the Talmud, Kazar ideology is not based on the Bible. It's not based on the Old Testament. It's based on the Talmud. And whites are the only obstacle between the Kazars and their objectives of nothing less than world domination. Whites would be the only ones who have ever opposed and would oppose opposition, any opposition to that. So the Kazar is doing everything in his or her power to turn every other group against whites through the provision of Kazar privilege. The Kazars would privilege every group who they can incentivize to fight against whites. In effect, anybody who receives Kazar Privilege becomes a revolutionary, a fighter for Kazar objectives. And this also goes for every university professor. So how does a white kid from northern Alberta, who has higher than average intelligence, come into academia? And how is this white kid, who's not a Kazar, how is he going to succeed? Well, as I said, I started in the fall of '83. University of Alberta. My English literature professor was a Catholic priest. And I took classes that really interested me. I went into the field that interested me, which was psychology, and I got my degree in psychology in 1988. I took sports psychology, and I took psychology of aesthetics and history. Of course, I've been a student of history, been interested in history my entire life, starting from birth almost. But history has to be done correctly. I had a very good history teacher in grade school, actually. And ever since then, I never really had anybody that could present history in such a way. But a lot of people are not interested in history. As a child, I was interested in history from day one. But in university, they did a very poor job at history. So I was quite disenchanted with that. I took art history. I took music history. Things that really interested me. So I started there in the fall of '83, and I just found out, I don't know, about a few months ago or whatever, that there was another individual there who was just leaving as I was starting, because he's a few years older than I. And then I heard that he came back in a year later to pursue his master's degree, I believe. And this individual is currently the smartest man on YouTube. Not to be mistaken for the smartest man who ever lived, who has to be a Kazar, of course, and that's Albert Einstein, a fabricated figure. Same as Sigmund Freud. But the smartest man on YouTube right now is Jordan Peterson, as you know, and I heard a while back that he makes $50,000 a month. And I have no idea where this money comes from. And now recently I heard that he's up to $70,000 a month. When I first heard it, I got nausea just from hearing it. I mean, who's paying this guy? You know, who's paying this guy? But I mean, I don't even think it's true. It's definitely not. I don't think it's an organic. I don't even think it's an organic phenomena. I think he's not being paid by the average person. I mean, I'm sure there's some of that, but the majority, I think, he's being paid by institutions. He's being paid by special interest groups, groups with a very strong political agenda, groups with a very strong desire for control, groups with a specific social engineering incentives, you know, within the whole cultural Marxism realm. They employ a whole army of these people, and a lot of them are very competent, and that's the key. That's why they're so seductive. And they specifically work social media. There's the main media. They got that covered, and then now they have social media covered, all of it. There are a lot of double agents on the internet which do speak your language and the language of the people, and that's why they are so popular. Shaping of opinions, and most importantly, dumbing down of society and keeping them away from awareness. Keeping them from awareness. Organizations that he works for, and specifically does work for them on YouTube and other social media. He's a social media star. He works on social media. Not counting his salary as a tenured professor in Toronto, which is what is that these days? $200,000 or whatever, which puts him just a little bit above the poverty line in Toronto. You can't help but bump into his videos. I mean, he's got hundreds of videos on YouTube. It's amazing, and he just shot up meteorically in popularity and has an international career right now. You know, they fly him around for speeches and interviews and all that. And whenever you see success, what seems to be unreal, unnatural, artificial success, you have to look for Kazar Privilege. And then I heard Jordan Peterson he was almost in tears many times, talking about the Nazis and man's brutality against man. You know, give him credit. He does talk about the Marxists as well, communists. But he certainly doesn't hold back in mentioning the 6 million figure constantly. It's one of the things that you must do if you want to get Kazar Privilege. And I'm telling you, you're not going to be a success in life. You're going to be a failure. You're going to be a loser. And if you're wondering why you are a loser and why you are a failure, or at least why you have not realized your true potential, at least, it's because you've got absolutely no Kazar Privilege. So, which you would be eligible to receive Kazar Privilege if you were a minority of some type, any type of minority, visible minority, gender minority, any type of victimized, allegedly victimized group, which you are by default if you are a minority. At this point, the white population is not a minority. But even if they were a minority, they will never receive privilege. They will never receive Kazar Privilege. In fact, the agenda goes towards the opposite direction in the devaluing and the destruction of the white population by removing every type of privilege that they would deserve to have. So you can work your ass off, you can be as talented as you can be, you can have everything going for you, but you're still going to be excluded from all chances of opportunity and networking and also connections. It would simply not be available to you, and that's on purpose. You will be the very last. As a white male, you are going to be the very last on the list of being recognized and being considered for anything in life. You are not going to get very far no matter what you do. You're going to get to a certain point. You're going to be able to make a living hopefully, but even that is becoming less and less likely especially for the white male. For the white male, he is specifically targeted by the Khazars. The elimination of the white male, and the only problem with MGTOW, men going their own way, which is a reaction to the Kazar attack on the white male, specifically the white male, the young white male, the Kazar persecution of the white male, nothing less than that. The problem with MGTOW is you're not reproducing, and it's exactly what the Kazar wants. So that's probably the only problem I have with MGTOW, is you're falling right into the palm of their hands, of the hands of the Kazars. You are doing exactly what the Kazar wants you to do. MGTOW, men going their own way. You're going to your own demise. Enjoy your demise. And you're backed in the corner. You really have no choice. You can go towards traditionalism, and if you go to MGTOW, you will simply cease to exist, which is happening right now with the dire problem in terms of reproduction. As much as I detested Marxism on campus, and I made the decision that I'm not going to be an academic. I made the decision that as soon as I got my degree, I'm out of there. Somebody coming from a different cultural, intellectual background than I did would not be immune to the seduction of Marxism and Kazar Privilege. Degrees follow, positions follow, tenure at the University of Toronto follows, and it's all possible through Kazar Privilege. In fact, you must understand that it's not possible in any other way. Understand this. You're not going to get very far without Kazar Privilege in this world, no matter what area you're in, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what endeavor you're in. It's only possible with Kazar Privilege, because then the Kazar will be promoting you. And without promotion, you don't get anywhere in any field. That's the number one thing you should learn. Start there. Nobody would be allowed to operate, to succeed, if it doesn't go through the Kazars, if it doesn't get authorized by the Kazars. Kazars are a very cohesive, insular group, and it's based on genetics. Everything they accuse the Nazis of is what the Kazars are. The atrocities they accuse the Nazis of is what the Kazars have committed. So here's this young Jordan Peterson, and he wants to succeed. Nothing wrong with that. Every young man wants to succeed. And I don't know if we just got caught up in the system, or if he actually understood what was happening and consciously decided to adopt the Kazar ideology and promote it and live it. He signed on. And nobody becomes a star. Nobody becomes rich and famous without Kazar approval. And the Kazars will only approve it if you're working for the Kazar objective. Just ask anyone in Hollywood or the entertainment business, and they will tell you the same thing. Recently, there was a article I heard written about Jordan Peterson by a far-left Marxist writer at one of the major Toronto newspapers, and it was entitled Jordan Peterson, the Stupid Man's Smart Person. And even though she was absolutely wrong with how she categorized Jordan Peterson, she made him out to be a conservative. Can you believe it? This guy's got nothing to do with conservatism. He's actually promoting Kazar ideology, disguised as being somewhat on the right and fighting for free speech, which is totally bogus, which is a total contradiction of what this guy stands for. But anyway, did I ever meet Jordan Peterson University? I don't know. Did I pass him in the hall? Possibly. I didn't know him personally. He was there. Now, I was an undergraduate. You know, he was a graduate student. I was an undergraduate. We don't really cross paths. They conduct experiments, studies in which the undergraduates must take part in as subjects. I'd taken part in several of those studies in my first 2 years in the psychology department. We're basically walking the same halls, I believe. But I even conducted a study of my own, which was unusual because undergraduates don't conduct studies. It was published. The professor who was overseeing it, that's all he did was oversee it. But I did everything. I conceptualized the study, and I conducted it, and I wrote it up, and he published. So it's published. It's out there somewhere. But that was Dr. Nelson. My other professor, if you're listening, Jordan, you can corroborate this. Dr. Schwartz, he was specializing in psychology of aesthetics. Then I took cognitive psychology, which is the most boring type of psychology you can take. And that was a younger guy, very bland, unpersonable individual from California, actually. I think Berkeley. Was it Berkeley? A lot of the older professors in Canada at that time, at least, were Americans. They were left-wing defectors from the draft, from the Vietnam era. They did what they promised, and they left America and moved to Canada, and found employment in the various Canadian universities. So you could realize where their ideology was coming from. A very different world than where I was coming from. I mean, how do you make it in academia? One would argue that Jordan Peterson really had no choice. If you're going to advance in academia and go all the way to becoming a tenured professor, there's just no way. You have to go through all the Kazars. You have to qualify. You have to qualify in terms of Kazar credibility. You have to get your Kazar creds. And I always thought that this individual was supposed to be a scientist, and he's supposed to be very inquisitive and always in the search of truth. He never questioned the details about the Holocaust. He never questioned a lot of the self-identifying features of the Kazar community and about their identity. He never questioned any of that, and he would always promote it. He would always promote the Kazar narrative, as you know. He would always just repeat everything that we've heard a million times all our lives, the propaganda. And it's just not consistent with a trained academic, a scientist, and he truly had a deep felt emotion in terms of totally accepting this narrative. And I knew right away there's something wrong with this. I mean, he was not trying to look at any revisionist history or anything like that. He knew that he had to be in the party. In any communist nation, if you wanted to advance to any level past street sweeper or cleaning toilets, you had to be in the party. And if you were in the party, you had to promote party ideology. And that is in effect what every professor must do in academia. And it's a real sad situation. So forget about Jordan Peterson having courage. He can't have courage. Forget about Peterson having individuality. Forget it. Any creativity, any independence and discernment about the vast number of incredulous aspects of the Kazar identity, for instance. Advancement in his discipline, because if he doesn't go past the Kazar narrative, he's basically a 5-year-old in terms of intellectuality, in terms of his understanding and his awareness. It kind of just shocks you when you see how unaware he is on those topics. I mean, it's so unfortunate, really. I mean, he has a platform. He has a very large platform, and he's not able to get the information out there. The problem with Jordan Peterson is not what he says; it's what he doesn't say. That's the problem. And he would have millions of people that would want to follow him and look up to him for this information. He's just not giving it. He can't give it. As soon as he said one wrong word, you would never hear of Jordan Peterson ever again. He would disappear, because the people that are keeping him on social media are the same people that could bring him down in one day. Well, the sad part is that Jordan Peterson doesn't have free speech. He doesn't have anything resembling free speech. He cannot. He can only speak on permissible topics. He's got to be totally politically correct, and nothing that would ever expose the Kazar, bring awareness about the Kazars. He can never be in opposition with the Kazar ideology and the Kazar incentives, because in fact he is employed to advance those objectives. He's simply put on YouTube by the Kazars to cement, to firmly establish in your mind the Kazar narrative, something that you've been fed since birth, if you are in the West. To believe that Jordan Peterson is going to red pill you is being really mistaken. It really shows your ignorance. It really shows that you have no background in solid knowledge, and you should educate yourself very quickly. don't look to Jordan Peterson to red pill you. He can't. He doesn't want to, and he's not allowed to. All he can do is fight against pronouns, artificial pronouns that he was never forced to use, as far as I know. So the whole thing is hypothetical, really. He's fighting a hypothetical principle, which is noble, but doesn't really exist. And that's not really where the problem is. The problem is everything that's behind that, all the forces that brings all that degeneracy to us. That's what he should be fighting. See, Peterson will never ever tie any of this to the Kazars, who are behind it all, who are behind everything. It's not women, it's not minorities, it's not Muslims, it's not gays. It's the Kazars that are mounting this calculated, massive, strategic attack on specifically the white race, or white people, whatever you want to call them, Western society. You got to understand, this is an organized war against you if you're part of that group. And the big crime that Peterson commits is that he will never tie that to the Kazars for you. And he's got every opportunity to do so, and he won't. He's a shill of the First Order. He's fighting a cough, but he's not fighting the sickness, see? And through it all, he comes across as very disingenuous. And that's what I felt in my stomach from the first time I saw him. There's something not honest about this guy. And he can only go to this level, but he can't pass that line. He can't cross that line. And it just leaves you more confused than you ever were even before listening to him. He doesn't actually give you any substance. Not the substance you're looking for even. I mean, a lot of people are looking for substance, but you're not getting it from Jordan Peterson. So he's for free speech, but he doesn't have free speech himself. And he really cannot, and he will not have the courage to fight for free speech for anyone, really, because as soon as he does that, his neck is on the line. And he will be dismissed. He will be eliminated. He will be a non-person, an unperson, whatever you want to call it. He would be totally and completely ostracized, disgraced, discredited, character assassinated, and all of a sudden his Patreon account would be empty. He will be erased. His existence will be erased. So he has to be on the Kazar side. He's not on anybody else's side. He should, first and foremost, identify the subversives and put a name to them and say who they are. I mean, where is all this coming from? It's only coming from one source. And Jordan Peterson is not telling you. And he should be telling you. Every problem, every issue stems from this one source. Everything stems from this one source. And it's been like that for hundreds and hundreds of years. From this one source. And once you understand this, everything comes clear in your head. You're no longer confused. You can identify everything that you see. Everything you experience, you can identify it accordingly. And Jordan Peterson is not telling you this. He's keeping you confused and sending you down the wrong path. and on totally irrelevant topics, saying millions of words. You understand what I'm telling you? He is saying that you've lost your free speech. He's saying that you're living in tyranny, but he's not telling you who took your free speech and who is putting you under tyranny. That's his crime. And you know what? You should expect more from Jordan Peterson. You really should. You should be really pissed off. You've been duped. But it's very simple. He's not giving you the simple explanation. That's what makes him look like a fraud. And that's why he is a fraud. He's not helping you out. The article that was written recently, Jordan Peterson, the stupid man, smart person, sums it up very accurately. And this spontaneously created certain individuals to come to the defense of Jordan Peterson. Now, I don't know what he has done that's so great, other than claiming to refuse to use pronouns, which he was never forced to use. He shows no courage. He shows no independence of thought. He basically can't. He's walking a tightrope, and as easily as they can make him into a star, that easily they can bring him down. They can bring him down. And he knows this. And he knows this. He's working within a Kazar Marxist system, and he must adhere to those laws. He must promulgate the ideology, and he must believe it or pretend to believe it. He has to spread it. He has to disseminate it. And that's exactly what he's doing on YouTube, under the guise of fighting for freedom. Freedom of speech, at least. Peterson can be envied for something. He mentioned in one of his videos that his wife, who he met, I don't know, at the age of 7 or something, has never ever lied to him. Now this is remarkable. This is absolutely unheard of and remarkable, but it makes me think that if I was in that situation, I could never speak on female nature. I could never speak on relationships. Couldn't do any of it. All I could do is be an academic and give you the information from books. You know, things that I would memorize and say it back to you. Because I certainly would not be able to speak from experience. Can you imagine a woman? The woman has never lied to him? How can he ever speak about the depth of female nature, the impact that female nature has on men? Everything I speak about is through experience. And how about other women? How about experiencing other women? Different types of women. Being in relationships, studying other women, by being in the belly of the beast, by being in the lion pit. That's where you get your experience about women in the real world. Then I use my keen perception to analyze it, take it apart, dissect it. And through the formulations and theories and concepts that I bring to you regarding these experiences. So whatever I hear from men and from women, I've been there. I've been there. And worse. So that's interesting. His wife has never lied to him. Oh. I can't even fathom that. Lying is the most fundamental characteristic of a woman and what hurts men the most. Or possibly the only thing that hurts men. It all has to do with women lying. It betrays men. It hits men right in the heart. And a woman not lying is like a fish who does, which doesn't swim. It's no longer a fish, is it? Then I ran into another YouTube video which they're praising him as an absolute genius, and I just had to write a response to this, make a comment, and I wrote just my observations regarding his presentation style and image, projected image, resulting in an amazing lack of practical substance. Impressive, yet contemptible, is his careful, politically correct avoidance of profundities and the truly sensitive issues of our time for reasons of self-advancement and the maintenance of his status within the political structure of academia. A perfect illustration of the insincerity of the type B personality, male personality. He is no leader but a shill of the first order and thus serves a very important purpose. His exposure and elevation on YouTube is just a part of it. However, he knows that he actually walks a very thin tightrope between his international success and his complete ruin at the hands of his masters. He knows he would be a failure in the private sector, which necessitates actual tangible accomplishment. This is why he is and remains an academic, with all of its irrelevance. This type of individual can become very dangerous under certain environments, such as any type of totalitarianism, namely communism. Every communist regime is built upon countless individuals like Jordan Peterson, which maintain that system of deception, and yes, they live like kings with all the success and privilege they are granted within that communist system, the Kazar ideology. These individuals are actually the underpinnings and the structure of such selectively privileged system under the big lie of compassion and equality. Peterson is a very skilled deceiver and propagandist. The pedestrian will not detect it and actually defend him. This is why Jordan Peterson is the stupid man's smart person. Now, the methodology and the style that Jordan Peterson brings to his presentations is that of a shredder. If you don't know what a shredder is, it's a rock star, or somebody who's trying to be a rock star, pretends to be a rock star, and goes up on stage and plays guitar, but he plays 300 notes a minute. And the whole audience is mesmerized. Wow, no, that's technique. That's technique. Oh my God, that's technique. But he's not conveying any musical message. He's not conveying any heartfelt emotion through his playing. There's no sincerity in his playing. Juxtapose that with somebody like B.B. King, who plays 3 notes with vibrato. But those 3 notes will stay with you forever. And they say a lot. 3 notes say a lot. So this is why usually when you ask somebody, well, you know, you were listening to a video by Jordan Peterson, and it's regardless of how long the video was, and you ask them, well, what did he say? You say, well, what did you learn? And the person says, whoa, this guy's amazing. Yeah, he's amazing. This guy's amazing. And well, okay, but what did he say? So people usually will not be able to answer that question. They're going to say, well, I'm not sure. It was impressive, you know. So I feel that is nothing much more than a bunch of useless verbal diarrhea. All right. And but Jordan Peterson is an interesting situation, because he recently got really exposed. People really found out who he was and what he is and who he's working for. And that was through the Faith Goldy situation. Faith Goldy was working for Kazar, and she went down and met with Andrew Anglin. Now, Andrew Anglin is called all kinds of names. Namely, he's called a neo-Nazi, which he's not. Andrew Anglin believes in reason. And most of who are listening to me now are going to agree with virtually almost everything that Andrew Anglin promotes and talks about and believes. There's really nothing special about Andrew Anglin. He doesn't make any statements which are against anybody, really. He just simply wants to promote human nature and the laws of nature and logos, the order of nature, the order of God. And this is something that actually, it's really funny, because even all these people that talk about Nazis and Hitler and all this, it's really ironic that they also believe in, I would say, if not everything, almost everything Andrew Anglin believes in, including most people who are listening to me right now. But of course, if you are not with the Kazars, you are immediately against the Kazars, and you are the enemy of the Kazars, and you will not be the recipient of any Kazar Privilege. Therefore, you will never make it in academia. Unlike Jordan Peterson. See? So Jordan Peterson knows what is at the root of success. And the root of success anywhere, and you do your own research, look in a little bit more depth at anybody who's successful, and you will realize that they all were given Kazar privilege, every single one of them. So most of us do not have Kazar privilege. When Faith Goldy met with Andrew Anglin, the Khazars got very nervous because they don't want these people to be heard, because the average person may just agree with them, which they would. A lot of people agree. A lot of people on YouTube who are claiming to be on the right, all the YouTube whores, I call them, who never mention the Khazars. Okay, they don't exist. The most pressing issue, the most pressing topic, the most influential group of people who are shaping your world, your future, and sadly your demise, are never mentioned, are never acknowledged. You know, the enemies of humanity are never mentioned. But the funny thing is that all these commentators agree with most everything that Andrew Anglin believes. And so they rejected and repudiated Faith Goldy. Just like that. Just like that. Every little amount of Kazar privilege that she was granted prior was taken away from her. She'll probably never work again. If you ever have a chance to listen to Jordan Peterson's excuse, I will leave the link to that video in the description section of this video. He comes out as a real hypocrite, as a real despicable character. Very lame answer. And it really shows who he's working for. Jordan, you really threw Faith under the bus in the most cruel fashion. And at the same time, you absolutely nullified, invalidated everything you've ever done prior to that on YouTube or in social media. Maybe even beyond that. Just by this one act. It was a truly communist performance. I think you would be promoted in the party. Really promoted. It was just perfect. His answer publicly, the student was brave enough to ask him this to his face and wanted to know what happened with the Faith Goldy situation. Jordan Peterson simply said that associating with people who she should have questioned, and she didn't. So she should have asked at least one hard question. 3 would have been better. Okay? Now, what hard question, if I was forced to ask Andrew Anglin a hard question, or 3 hard questions, I would not be able to come up with those questions. I simply wouldn't. And most of you wouldn't either. Why do you want to stop immigration? Why don't you want the races to mix? Why are you against the Western world losing its culture and identity? Are these the hard questions? Nobody can ask those questions. The reason we can't ask those questions, Jordan, and the reason Faith couldn't ask those questions, Jordan, is because we all know the answers already to those questions. We feel the answers inside. We live the answers. We represent the answers to those questions, Jordan. That's why we don't know what to ask Anglin. I really challenge you, Jordan, to draft up these 3 hard questions in your own words. Hard questions that one can ask Andrew Anglin to show that they're opposing Andrew Anglin. We all agree with Andrew Anglin. And if you do not, you're a shill. You're a Kazar shill, and that's all you are, and that's what your purpose is on social media, on the internet. And it's becoming evident just in that act, in that reprehensible, to use your own word, act against Goldie. You have proven who you are. The only people that would oppose Andrew Anglin are the Kazars. And you would have to completely lie to yourself and deny your own intellectual honesty, your own integrity, if you were to draft up these questions. I don't even think you could draft up these questions, because there aren't any questions to be asked, because we all believe in those attitudes, perspectives, convictions, and that is what the Kazars are afraid of. That is exactly what they're afraid of. And that's what you're afraid of, because you're an agent of the Kazars. You always have been. That's why you're in the position that you're in. Kazar Privilege. Through Kazar Privilege. Like Judas, you have betrayed a friend for no reason. That was truly a biblical event, was it not? If anybody, I implore everybody to watch that event. I'm going to leave a link in the description section. Watch that event with how Jordan Peterson betrays Faith Goldy, who did not denounce Andrew Anglin on behalf of the Kazars, who got a little nervous just because he wants to pander to the Kazars, just because he wants Kazar privilege. There were 2 Kazars on stage with him, and they were watching Jordan, and they had high expectations of Jordan, and he better not step out of line, because if you're not for the Kazars, you're against the Kazars. Watch that. Watch his body language during the whole event. He knows he's guilty. He's got a conscience. It's good. That's a good point. That's a good sign. He knows that he was wrong, and what he's doing is wrong. But he can't do anything about it. Either Jordan will be crucified, or it'll be Faith Goldy. If Jordan supports Faith, and even in the slightest manner is detected as being on her side, they both get crucified. Side by side. They both get big, huge nails pounded through their hands and feet. And a big dagger speared through their chest. They both. So, Jordan actually got himself in an impossible situation he could not get out of. It's either Faith Goldy or it's both of them. What a scene. What a scene. You could put that scene in the Bible, couldn't you? It's monumental. Wow, that's heavy. Academia. Oh my God. An absolute hypocrite is exposed. Posturing for Kazar Privilege. You know why? Because you did not want to end up like Faith Goldy. And if you had defended Faith Goldy, you would be where Faith Goldy is now. Which is nowhere. No more fame and fortune. The only free speech Jordan Peterson has is whatever the Kazars, his masters, allow him to have. Jordan Peterson fighting for his free speech? You gotta be kidding me. Who are you kidding, Jordan? You have no free speech yourself. Everything depends on Kazar Privilege. So this is the best success seminar you're ever gonna hear in your life. Don't ever forget it. What do you need for success? Just look at Jordan Peterson and thousands of people like him in every field, in every endeavor. They are all connected to Kazars. You can't do it without it. You want another example? You want another example? Have you heard of Donald Trump? And his connection to Kazar Privilege? His connection to Kazars? Go look up Donald Trump. And it doesn't matter what regime it is. And if Kazars are running your world, they only know one regime. And that's Kazar supremacy. It doesn't matter what name it's under. It's always Kazar supremacy, and they need their agents. They can't do it without their agents. Don't forget that. I really wish I would know what Jordan Peterson would have asked Andrew Anglin. I challenge you, Jordan, to write down these 3 questions. Give us these 3 questions, these 3, in your own words, hard questions. And I'm sure there's going to be no shortage of volunteers to pose those questions to Andrew Anglin. I'd be curious to know what these questions are and then await the answers. So she failed in her journalistic responsibility And as a consequence of that, he admits she became too hot a property for us. So just because she did not attack Andrew Anglin, and she actually believed in what Andrew Anglin stands for. And no, Andrew Anglin does not want to, he's not a white supremacist. He doesn't want to dominate over, take over the world. He just wants to keep away. He wants to have the races separated. And so that they don't infringe upon each other and they don't displace each other. But that just happens to be in total opposition and contrary to Kazar objectives. We all know that. And that's what has to be suppressed, so that awareness is not disseminated. We get it. As simple as that. Peterson states that Faith Goldy had become too hot of a property for us, and not just for us. For who? Every Kazar. Here's Faith Goldy, who actually could not object to Andrew Anglin. No Goyim can object to Andrew Anglin unless you are a Kazar operative, unless you are a Kazar yourself, or you are an accomplice to the Kazars. Then Jordan Peterson has the nerve to say that he doesn't think that Faith Goldy is a reprehensible person. Well, I think Jordan Peterson is a reprehensible person. He went against everything that he claims to be for, which we had found out that it was a total fraud. He's a total fraud, and he's only there for the reason to misdirect you, to promote the Kazar ideology under the guise of being on your side. And he's not on your side, and he proved it. It was a discussion about free speech, and they rejected a person for exercising her free speech just because she may have actually agreed with Andrew Anglin, the enemy of the Kazars. And Jordan Peterson was there, up there stage with two Kazars, and he looks absolutely menacing. It's when we realize that Peterson is actually a wolf in sheep's clothing, and the sheep cover was just ripped away or fell off, and the wolf was exposed. And it's a shocker. Contradicted everything that he ever stood for, or more accurately, claimed to stand for, masqueraded as, in that one moment, because he had to pander to the Kazars for fear of facing his own demise, or at least that of his career. His status within the party, fundamentally his status within society, and the wolf just got exposed. And it's striking, and it's so ominous. Jordan Peterson has suddenly become politically correct, which is another word for politically permissible, according to Kazar parameters, Kazar doctrine, Kazar ideology, which Jordan Peterson is put on social media to promote. And at that moment, it became unquestionable, unequivocal, what the purpose of Jordan Peterson really is. In the Kazar party, Kazar world, in which Jordan Peterson lives and operates. As I said before, much of the problem with Jordan Peterson, the inconsistency, the hypocrisy, the disingenuousness that becomes apparent is due to not so much what he says, it's what he doesn't say. He says a lot of constructive things, which a lot of people should hear. But mixed in with that is a clear message of the promotion of Kazar objectives. Every time he speaks, there's the underlying message of that. There's another good YouTube video which lists and highlights and examines the various tweets that Jordan Peterson has made. And you can really see right through the disguise. I don't know the name of it, but you can search it. The problem with Peterson is that people try to label him. They're desperate to label him this or desperate to label them that. The Marxists label him as a conservative and right-wing. The right-wing, the alt-right, or whatever, labels him as shitting all over them, basically. The truth is that the problem with Peterson is that he has no ideology. And this is, if somebody doesn't have a clear-cut ideology, doesn't stand for something that is solid and unquestionable, regardless of what side it is. Personally, I would be very happy if he was to come out on either side. But you cannot function with no ideology. You completely lose your credibility. You completely lose your dignity in the eyes of others. You don't define yourself. They don't know what you are and what you stand for. You don't stand for anything. Or you cannot dilute your ideology. Me being an absolutist, as you know, I really believe in firm principles and not deviating from those principles, because if you do, you do end up being a double agent, a shill. And unfortunately, Peterson is in the position with a huge stage, a huge audience, but he also has a dogmatic, emphatic, unyielding, forceful master. He's not getting the message across, and if he was to come out and actually disclose unequivocally what side he is on, I think everybody would be much more happier. The expectations that people have developed for him have really fallen short. People have been really disenchanted. People have been disappointed, angered, because nobody likes a double agent. We become insecure if there's a double agent amongst us. So that's the problem. It's the problem that he ignores the biggest issue, basically the only issue facing humanity. How can you speak on anything if you ignore the catalyst, the element which precipitates every event that happens in the world. Everything he speaks on should be predicated upon the Kazar agenda for world supremacy. The most significant, the most important, crucial, pivotal issue facing humanity, which is Kazar supremacy and domination. Everything that Jordan Peterson speaks on should be grounded in that one topic. Everything, because everything stems from that one topic. Now, anybody listening to this, you may not have thought about things in this manner. Now you will, and you will be able to attribute everything that happens to the world, or in the world, or to you indirectly or directly. Anything in the news, domestic policy, foreign policy, everything, economics, immigration, healthcare, elections, the transplanting of entire populations from different continents, art, literature, pop culture, morality, entertainment, everything. Very importantly, all wars, real or bogus, is tied to this one issue, Kazar influence. You can call it anything you want, Jordan. You can call it postmodernism, you can call it Marxism, you can call it communism, you can call it totalitarianism. It's all the same thing. It's Talmudic. It's all the ideology. It all has to do with one ideology: supremacy and the enslavement of everyone else. See, the way it comes across, Jordan, is everything you are fighting against, or apparently claiming to fight against, are the exact same things that you're trying to promote. This is where the dubiousness comes from regarding your message, regarding your purpose. You're fighting against Kazar behavior, exploits, maneuvers, actions, ideology, and at the same time, you're promoting Kazar ideology. At the same time, you're promoting it by taking away everything that we have to defend ourselves with. You're deriding all those elements that we can only use to defend ourselves. Those of us who do not possess Kazar privilege. Looking at Jordan Peterson up on stage there, and I encourage you to watch that video of that event. It's going to be in the description section of this video, the link to it. Looking at Peterson, he looks menacing. He looks like a different individual, does he not? Absolutely menacing to me. I've seen that character. There's so many of those in communism, and they become ruthless just because they want a piece of that privilege, that Kazar privilege. And he's a success, and he's got everything to owe to Kazar privilege. If you look at on YouTube, the successful individuals, and you don't know why, millions of subscribers, fame, fortune, they're Kazars. Or they work for the Kazars, promoting Kazar ideology in exchange for privilege. There's your key to success, people. Kazar privilege. This is what this video is about. It's a success video. It's a method to acquire success. The best and fastest method to do so. I mean, think about it. The way the Kazar world operates is you really have no choice. If you want to exist, you have to work for them. If you want to be absolutely obscure, made to disappear, that's your other option. There's no middle ground, really. Those of us who don't refuse to work for the Kazars, we disappear. And those of you who do work for the Kazars, you become promoted. You are made to be relevant. You're made to be influential, very well known, rich and famous. You become a star. You become relevant in the Kazar world because you are promoting Kazar ideology. There's no difference in the world that you now live in, because now it's all out in the open. It's all blatant. It's all conspicuous. They've gotten to such an arrogant level and have acquired so much power that there's no reason to be surreptitious any longer. And in this world is no different from Stalinist Russia, Soviet Union. No different from Mao's China, Ho Chi Minh's Vietnam, Castro's Cuba. There's only one direction the Kazars will take you in. You have to understand this. You have to understand your fate. And Jordan Peterson is not telling you your fate. You're living it right now. And I'm happy you are, because I don't feel alone any longer. You're all experiencing what I knew what was going to be happening and what was happening behind the scenes before. But now it's right out in the open. It's happening right here on YouTube. You can see it. It's happening in every aspect of society. You are living it. And Jordan Peterson has gone a long way by securing that Kazar privilege, which they granted him, but only if he does what they assign him to do. As soon as he trips, as Faith Goldy has, and he knows it, he's afraid of it, as soon as Jordan Peterson trips, you will never hear of him ever again. Trust me on that one. He becomes irrelevant. He becomes a non-person, just the way the Kazars in the USSR, when they eliminated an individual, one of their own, when they purged the party, every photograph was doctored, and the person taken out of the photograph, they become unpersons, just as George Orwell illustrated in his book. And he's very afraid of that. He looks absolutely menacing, totally dishonest, a total traitor. Wow. He looks like he would denounce and betray his own mother. Just like that. Just to maintain his Kazar privilege. And up on stage with two Kazars who are keeping their eyes on him, making sure he says what the Kazars want to hear. Anyway, that's the way our world is going, and hopefully you can tie the dots together and realize why everything is happening in the world and why. Everything's a hoax. Everything is a fabrication. Everything is deception. Everything is manipulation. Every day the Kazars bring you theater. They bring you Saturday Night Live. And then they laugh. The stupid Goyim believes it. Oh, they're so good. They don't want to be called racist. They'll do anything not to be called racist. Oh, they're so nice. And don't step out of line, because you're going to get a tap on your shoulder. If you have any principles, you will not act as Jordan Peterson has acted, just because he refuses to use, or claims to refuse to use, certain gender pronouns. He's elevated by the Kazars. You gotta understand, these are the pronouns the Kazars came up with in the first place and forced it on us, or trying to force it on us. Political correctness. It's politically allowed thought. Control the language. Make sure you think the right thoughts. Masquerading as a conservative, or an alt-right, or just somebody who simply is looking out for your freedom. No. Never. He's there for a purpose. He's there to mislead you, just like a whole army of others. A whole army of others. As soon as you hear somebody bring up white supremacy, utter that phrase. As soon as you see somebody crying over the Holocaust, as soon as you see somebody denying the existence of the Kazars and how they rule our world, you know that that individual works for the Kazars. And you should stay clear. There's very few of us who actually have real courage in order to even utter these sentiments, to give you the truth, to give you the reality of your world. Jordan Peterson is not one of them. So to conclude this video on success and how to be successful in life, that's what it is. You have to go out on your own, be very vigilant, open your eyes, don't just look, but be able to see, and pick out individuals and see what their ideology is. And you will see that every successful person past that invisible line is going to be either a Kazar or is working for the Kazars. And that's where success comes from. So if you want to be successful, same way as they went to Alex Jones and they said, look, you want to stand out on a street corner, scream your head off about conspiracy theories, you want to be a freak, you're going to be on some late night minor radio channel or on ham radio or something, you want that? Or you want to be a rock star? You want to be a shredder? He had no choice. Sign me on. I'm working for you. And he built an empire. Never hear him mention the Kazars. Never hear him attribute culpability to the Kazars for anything. Don't exist. It's Muslim this, it's globalist that, left this, left that. These people are actually, they're all talking about Kazars. They just can't say the word. They're not allowed to say the word. In a lot of ways, it's impossible for them to say the word. They had sold their soul and signed the contract. There's no going back. As soon as they say the word, they're gone. But now you know. The speech about success that I just gave you should have been given by Jordan Peterson. But it'll never come from Jordan Peterson. And you thought he was successful because he's smart. No. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't matter. only one thing matters, which is, you got it. Here's what you should have done, Jordan. Here's what you should have done, Jordan. As soon as you heard any rumbling about Faith Goldy and the tension she had created for the Kazars, and among the Kazars, and how neurotic they became, as soon as you heard that there was something going on which the Kazars were very uneasy about, and as soon as you heard that they were going to reject and remove Faith Goldy from the panel, you should have immediately resigned with no explanation. It would have been self-explanatory. You should have immediately, without any word, resigned from the panel yourself. With no explanation. You didn't have to give an explanation. You should have immediately resigned. That would have been the honorable thing to do. That would have proven forever that you're not a shill. You're not a Kazar shill. That's what I would have done. And you know what? You would not have been so much standing up for Faith Goldy. You would have been standing up for yourself, for your own dignity, for your own credibility. You should have immediately said, no hard feelings. I understand your positions. You would have said that to the Khazars and immediately resigned without a word. And if you're making $70,000 a month now, you would have doubled that. You would have been the hero of the world. Jordan Peterson standing up for free speech. Yeah! The whole world would have cheered. This guy is for real. This guy is for real. He's not just 300 words a minute. This guy is actually for real. We'll send him our money. Everyone around the world, send him your money. This guy is for real. He's standing up for us. But you failed, Jordan. You came crashing down and kissed the feet of the Kazars, from which you get your Kazar privilege. You failed. You failed. You fell. You fell. And you look terrible. You were exposed. Your clothes were ripped away. Your cover was no longer on you. Everybody would have looked up to you as a role model. Somebody who did the right thing. It would have been easy for you to resign, excuse yourself from the situation, but you didn't do it. You didn't do it because you knew that if you were to do that, even though you would have been a hero to everyone, even more so than you are now, or maybe not anymore, who knows? But you would have made a huge statement. But you knew that would have only lasted for a very short time, and the Khazars would have removed you. Because you know who is in control. You know that very well. You knew that all the way through your academic career. It's what got you to where you are. So you threw Faith Goldy under the bus, and you threw your own dignity, your own honor, your own credibility, your own integrity under the bus. Because you were corrupted by the Kazars, from whom you take your orders. As simple as that.